You'll have to excuse us. As some of you are aware, this past weekend we celebrated 10 years of the Interloop. We had a big, fancy, fun gala situation, and so we are recovering. But we're here. We're here.
You're here, we're here. We're going to hear some amazing literature and enjoy some Taco Tuesday, actually. Rob, I hope you're adjusting the sound. It sounds crazy right now. There he goes. Okay.
He's like on it.
Okay, so the Interloop is, in case anybody doesn't know who we are, we cultivate and promote the distinctive literary culture of Washington, D.C. We have 5 distinct programs in order to do that. These readings, where we bring writers from every stage of their career and every background to the same stage. We believe all writers deserve access to the same stage and audiences. We have a podcast where we talk about craft and the literary life.
And we interview awesome people, exclusive interviews, so you should check it out.
Exclusive interviews.
This is oral history we're talking about here, people.
We have
It really
summer.
is,
It actually is pretty amazing content out there for free, just for you. We have some residency program that, we invite people to a historic site to reflect on histories.
We partner with the Woodlawn and Copley houses
There it
in
is.
Virginia on a collaborative writers residency to think about place, history, and space, and who it belongs to, etc.
Perfect.
There we go.
We also do writing retreats out in West Virginia. Our next one is coming up actually next month. If you missed the deadline for that, which you did if you haven't applied.
If you don't know that you're coming, you're not
If you don't
coming.
know that you're coming, you're not coming. But if you're interested, our next one is in April. So join the mailing list so that you can keep up to date on that.
At Cacapen State Park.
Cape State Park up in West Virginia. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
What I
Author's
miss?
Corner.
Oh, the most important, second most important program, Author's Corner. So every month.
All of our programs are equally important.
Okay, you're right. Every month we feature an author who's recently published with a small to medium-sized press, and we feature them across all our programming and a bunch of collaborations around the city. They get a feature article in Washington Independent Review of Books. We get their books in bookstores. They do panels. They do interviews. It's pretty amazing. And we happen to have one of those rock stars here tonight. We'll hear more about that later. And one announcement. This Thursday we have a special happy hour event. So if you like talking to writers, hanging out with writers, this event is for you. It's going to be at Sonny's Pizza in the little No Kisses bar. Very cool, speakeasy-esque.
It's Georgia Ave, and there's no program to it. It's just like, come hang out, come to barbecue.
We are partnering with Penn Faulkner and the Writers Center, so we're going to have very cool people from all those organizations ready to hang out with you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Without further ado.
We are very excited this evening to welcome our featured reader, Carol Mitchell, who is the author of the novel Let's Start Bad a Morning, as well as 19, count that, books for children. She lives and teaches in Northern Virginia and is working on a collection of speculative short stories, which I'm excited to hear about. Carol, thank you so much for coming.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really psyched to be here. I have to say, as a featured author, that's such a bizarre term, but anyway. So my novel came out September 2023, and What's That Bad Morning, and you can ask me about the title. It took a long time to get there. So it's, and you have to have time because I tell stories the way a Caribbean person tells stories. Like I visited one of my aunts on Sunday, and I asked her how she and her husband met, and 45 minutes later, I was like, you realize you still haven't told me how. And she's like, I'm getting there. So, yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to read a section of the book that I've never read before. And I kind of want to read it tonight because it really digs in a little bit to how the main character, and not me, felt about her coming to the US and being an immigrant here and some of those experiences. And so I have no idea how long it's gonna take. So if I'm too long, I don't think I'm gonna be too long, but
You'll be
feel
fine.
free to cut me off. I think the only thing that you need to know is that Brian is her husband and Mrs. Lynn, who makes a little cameo appearance, is her mother-in-law, Brian's mom. And so Brian's mom won the visa lottery, which is a thing, and they, went through all the whole process, and she got, because she was married to Brian, she was able to come to the US, but it was sort of never in her plans. And so, anyway, that's all that you kind of need to know. So, this is, and the other thing is that the story goes back and forth quite a bit in time, and so this is, she's remembering the past. So it's actually set in 2003, I think, maybe a little later. Sorry, it's been a while, but she's remembering September 1983. When we first moved in with Uncle Joe, I was sure I would suffocate within the walls of the cramped living space. Then, one afternoon, 1 month after our arrival, when Brian was at work and Taiwo slept, I slid the ever-closed bedroom shutters open and peeked out of the window. There I saw the back of another set of townhouses, a mirror of the building in which we lived, except for the intimate laundry hung out on a clothesline stretched across the width of the opposite balcony. I peered to the left of the clothes towards the window, half expecting to see a young woman staring back at me with the haunted eyes I saw in the mirror. The thought of another house with another young woman trapped in a life she had not quite expected disturbed me, and I cast my eyes away from the window and down to the ground. For the first time, I noticed a small area, weed-infested and dusty. The backyard was enclosed by a gray chain-link fence with a swing gate that hung a little lopsided and creaked loudly enough that later, when the night was still, I would hear it and imagine someone was sneaking in to plant a seed or two in the dry soil. When I nudged Brian awake to investigate the noise, he suggested it was just the wind, and I wondered what wind could find its way between the closely packed buildings. I imagined watering the seeds the imaginary intruder planted, or building a garden myself. I would have to select the hardiest of herbs. At first, I could not bring myself to choose, because whenever I thought of individual herbs in the garden, their smell would fill my head so thoroughly I would lose all 4 other senses in my fight to suppress the memories of the garden I had left behind at Aunt Marjorie's home in Jamaica. In those moments, I would close the window and try to fill my mind with other pursuits, entertaining Taiwo or perusing the books Brian brought home from school. But I could not stay away from the window, could not stop myself from looking down on the little garden and its potential. And eventually, I began to choose plants for the imaginary planting. Then, my prevailing fear became the impending winter that was anticipated with great anxiety by everyone in the household, and I despaired once more. If I planted, whatever I planted would die. I wondered if I would even survive. Eventually, I could no longer resist the urge to feel the soil between my fingers. I left the house, walked past the row of buildings on our block, and slipped into the alley behind. As I counted the houses I passed to ensure I entered the correct backyard, I wondered if perhaps the gate would be locked. It was not. I entered, and so began the first of many evenings spent in the backyard, with only Taiwo strapped to my front for company. I tilled the soil with pieces of discarded wood, a stolen spoon, and my fingers. I bought garlic, ginger, and rooted herbs from the farmer's market where Aunt Camilla took me on a Saturday morning, prepped them, and placed them in the soil. Over the next few weeks, I retreated further into a world that revolved around Taiwo and the garden, which yielded green sprouts, then robust plants under my care. So I'm going to skip a bit. So this is another memory that she's having. In our early days in the United States, I did not venture out on my own beyond the front steps that led up to Uncle Joe's house, the playground, and the garden I was tending in the back. Brian did not understand my reluctance to engage more in the new world we had entered. He worked hard to provide to us and felt that I had the easier job caring for an agreeable baby. Between you and my mother, I don't know who's worse. Long face on your end, complaining and nagging on hers. You're lucky I'm not a drinking man. It was 7:30 a.m. and he had just come home from a shift at the cemetery, his paws exuding the damp smell of newly turned earth. Brian had started working as a stock assistant in an office equipment company and had also been taking on shifts as a security guard in a city-run cemetery on nights when he did not have classes. Mrs. Lynn was unhappy about both jobs, mortified that her well-educated son, who had graduated at the top of his law school class, was reduced to hard and demeaning labor, and the fact that he was working in a cemetery did not sit well with her Catholic sensibilities. This is hard on all of us, I said. Taiwo stood in the cradle, positioned next to our bed. Everything in the room touched and shook and shivered together. I stretched a hand out and gently rocked the cradle. He settled back into sleep. Really? Brian's voice rattled the airwaves and Taiwo stirred again. I don't see you working 2 jobs and studying. At least you could be pleasant when I get home. That's too much to ask? Anger welled up inside me, rising from my stomach to my throat, stifling me, and I knew I had to escape. I was as stuck as Brian was. Why should I be required to pretend everything was great when it was not? I had fended for myself since becoming an adult, planning my next move, but since joining the Lynn family, I found myself at the backseat of my life, tasked only with sitting at home, caring for Taiwo, who was an easy baby and took her to my breast eagerly. I considered working, but having not completed my first degree, the jobs for which I was qualified were even less meaningful than Brian's, and leaving Taiwo with my mother-in-law to earn a minimum wage job was unthinkable. When Brian left the room to take a shower, I bundled myself and Taiwo into the warmest clothes we had and left the house, the baby secured in the carrier. He was 3 months old, a long, lean, 14-pound weight strapped uncomplaining to my chest. I stepped out of the townhouse, descended the steps, and turned right to walk down our street. A light blustering of wind followed me, lifting leaves from the ground, which then whirled in concert with the angry thoughts in my head. What more could Brian possibly want from me? Can't he see I'm just as lost as he is? I considered going to the garden and releasing my frustrations there, but my mind rebelled against the thought of being confined again, even outdoors. Besides, October had just begun and the mornings were chilly in my estimation. I had not gotten used to gardening in gloves. The layers between my fingers and the earth were restrictive. The park was just 3 blocks from our house. I was drawn to it, in part because it reminded me of Queen's Park Savannah in Trinidad, with its undulating, grassy terrain, walking paths, and flat areas for picnics and the playground. Like sections of the savannah, this park was lightly wooded with tall trees, and it was an odd respite in the midst of an urban setting. Unlike the savannah, it was small, only about an acre, not quite enough space to fully shield me from the DC bustle. Absorbed in my thoughts and barely aware of where I was going, I found myself at the playground. Taiwo was too young to enjoy its activities, but he seemed to like watching the children at play. He turned to look whenever a sudden shriek or peal of laughter rang out. Although it was only 8 o'clock, there were already 7 or 8 children on the playground, seemingly in constant motion, chasing one another around the equipment, climbing the single aging slide, pumping their legs to make the creaking swings go higher and higher. Mothers and nannies sat on the surrounding benches, and I walked past 3 seats before I found one that was unoccupied. I sat, cradling Taiwo's neck and rocking my body back and forth. I looked down at him, and he looked back at me. Although he didn't smile or coo, he seemed to know me and understand that I was a place where he could feel safe. As my mind slowed its angry pace and I became more aware of my surroundings, a wave of homesickness filled my body. The tree to which the bench was anchored was clearly a relation to a tamarind tree. with waxy leaves and fruit with a tough exterior, and I imagined tender, delicious insides. Morning light filtered through the leaves, creating a spotted pattern on my jeans that shifted and swayed as the leaves moved in the breeze. He's so cute! I barely restrained an eye roll as I heard the familiar reaction to Taiwo's wide-eyed serenity. This was another reason I kept to myself. Taiwo was fair-skinned, the dark brown in his ears the only indication that his skin would darken. The few white women I encountered in the park looked at Taiwo's complexion, pale like vanilla against my chocolate-hued skin, and assumed I was his nanny, not quite worthy of their time. Many black women fawned over him, going as far as to reach out to touch his skin. Me, on the other hand, they regarded with distrust, possibly assuming, based on Taiwo's appearance, that I was married to a white man. I raised my eyebrows to find a black woman looming over me. She wore her hair in a curly afro, a contrast to the chemically straightened styles worn by most of the women I'd seen in the neighborhood. And she only wore a padded vest over a long-sleeved t-shirt, in spite of what I considered to be cold weather. She had an open face, warm, free from guile, with light lines around her nose and mouth suggesting she was older than I was. Without asking permission, she sat next to me. I shifted to give her room. "Thanks," she replied. "Mine is 15 months old, Francine. She's over there." She pointed to a small child walking unsteadily on the gravel playground. I felt a stab of concern for the tiny body's safety in the midst of the older children on the swings and slides and spinning contraptions, but her mother seemed unperturbed. An older boy, about 6 years old, approached a little girl, picked her up and swung her around before placing her on the ground and running off once more. "That's her big brother Ian. This one's my last." The woman patted her belly, and I noticed a slight bulge under her vest. Later in our friendship, Jamela would confess that she saw me sitting alone on the bench, wearing all my winter clothes, like a lost lamb in need of rescuing. "You look like if someone said boo, you would break down crying." I decided not to give you a chance to escape. In quieter moments, Jamela admitted she might have been the one in need of rescue. "I'm Jamila Gill. What's this cutie pie's name?" I hesitated. All the stories I'd heard about strangers in the US being inherently dangerous coming to the front of my mind. Why did this woman want to know my child's name? Was she gonna try and lure him away? I pulled him closer and he whimpered. "I'm not gonna steal him," Jamela laughed. "God knows I've got my hands full." She patted her belly again. Our second surprise. She raised her fingers to signal quotation marks around the word surprise. I smiled. "His name is Taiwo," I said softly. "Do you have an accent? Are you from the islands?" The words tumbled out of Jamela's mouth with as much excitement as the children screaming on the playground as they flew higher and higher on the swings. Since leaving Jamaica, I'd worked hard to neutralize my accent and standardize my phrasing so their precise origin was undetectable. But the way I spoke still attracted questions. I normally responded viscerally to the Caribbean islands, each so individual they had been unable to successfully maintain an economic union, being referred to as if there was a single entity, a playground for Americans. But I forgave Jamela as soon as I heard her next words. "My mother is a Trini." I laughed. Jamela sang the word Trini the way she must have heard it said all her life. "You have an accent too," I said. "In truth," she quipped, "my mother raised me and my brothers as if we were still living in Trinidad. I tell people I'm more a second-generation immigrant than a first-generation American." "I'm from Jamaica," I said, in a delayed response to her question. I was drawn to this woman with her wide smile and dimpled cheeks. "And my name's Amaya." "Nice to meet you, Amaya." Jamela laughed again, and I was not sure why, but I laughed too. "How long you been here?" she asked. "Almost 2 months," I replied. "Ah, you just got off the boat," she replied. "How are you settling in?" "It's been okay." I patted Taiwo's back. "This one keeps me busy. so I haven't really done anything. But then, everyone is just so busy. My thoughts ran on Brian and his claim that I was silly, and I tried to lighten my words. It seemed. True, she said, her expression suddenly serious. It's the American dream. It's nothing like I expected. I bit my lip. I didn't know I was confiding in a stranger, but something about Jamela made me feel she could be trusted with my insecurities. How so? It's gonna sound silly. Try me. Everything I know about the US is from TV. Shows like Laverne and Shirley, One Day at a Time, and Little House on the Prairie. I can imagine. Jamela's tone was serious, but it was obvious she was trying to hold back a laugh. What? I said. I'm just imagining if Little House on the Prairie was your model, what you must have thought about life here. All of us riding around in horses and buggies? Her laughter erupted and time was shifted against me. I knew that wasn't today, wasn't current, I said stiffly, miffed at Jamela's mocking. What I'm saying is that I watched Sanford and the Jeffersons, but most of the shows are with white people, and so I didn't really prepare me for this. I waved a hand in front of me. I expected to see white people and not to connect with them, you know? I never really met one before I came here, but I did not expect so many African Americans, and I bit my lip, not sure how to express my feelings without being offensive. You thought you'd have more in common with them? Yeah, I replied, grateful for Jamela's ability to put my thoughts into words. It's weird. I look into their faces looking for something familiar. Like at home, people's faces belong, but nothing seems familiar here. It's like the geography and our different experiences marked us. They may as well all be white. I would keep that last part to myself if I were you, Jamela replied. I felt my cheeks burn. I didn't mean to offend you. Offend me? She laughed. I told you, I grew up with a woman who claimed any house we lived in as part of Trinidad. I warmed to the topic, Jamela's openness making me feel more and more at ease. I never thought I'd miss the salt in the air so much. When I was in Trinidad, I hardly went to the beach. You can't leave Jamaica and go Trinidad to the beach. But it's an island, so I guess the sea was always on the breeze. And I miss the rain. I so miss the rain. Sandwiched in the Lynn's house, where I was expected to be grateful for the opportunity to be in the US, I had not allowed myself to really think of all I longed for. In Jamaica, moisture gets caught up in the Blue Mountains, nowhere to go. So when it rained until the sky empty. Here, showers breeze past like an exam. Powerful, but over quick. And as for visitors, this last part was an echo of Mrs. Lynn's complaints. She was withering in the solitude and sameness of our days. Do you regret coming? Jamela interjected when I paused. I'm not sure, I said slowly, thoughts running through my mind of how the similarities to Jamaica had plagued and overwhelmed me and made me want to escape Trinidad. I guess it's early, and I still feel unmoored. I need something to anchor me to this place. I guess you miss family. I have no family. I softened my tone when I saw her expression. I only have an aunt, and I bit my lip. We aren't in touch. I get it, Jamela said. She looked at me, her hazel eyes soft with concern. You've taken on a lot, moving, and with this little one. It must be overwhelming, but there's a lot of good here, and great opportunities for the babes. She gestured towards Taiwo. You will find your way. I nodded, relieved to have expressed my unhappiness without the guilt I felt back at Uncle Joe's house. We had so much. We were so lucky. And Brian was working so hard, it felt unfair to complain. Yet that didn't make my discomfort any less real. Our conversation took us from the playground to a nearby cafe where Jamela wrangled with her 6-year-old and her toddler, trying to settle them to eat, handling demands for ketchup, fries, and soda. I looked down at Taiwo, snuggled against my bosom, content in his own world, and tried to imagine a day when he would be so vocal and demanding. "This place has the best cupcakes," Jamila said. "My husband works a couple blocks from here. On the days when I have to drive him to work, I bring the children to the playground and we come here for a treat." She took a bite of the cupcake she was holding. Creamy white filling oozed from the middle and coated her fingers. "You should try it," she said, offering me the side of the cupcake she had not yet bitten. I drew back from the invitation. Jamila shook her head. "I'm so sorry. I spend so much time with the children, I forget how to behave with adults." She laughed and pushed a box of cupcakes towards me. "Take your own, of course. Please, try one." We fell into an unspoken plan to meet regularly at the playground. I looked forward to the meetings. When I was with Jamila, my laughter emanated from a place deep in my belly that I'd only just discovered. Only a week had passed of daily meetings when I confided into Jamila about our situation at Uncle Joe's, now well into its second month, and the reason I had been looking so forlorn on the bench the day we met. "Get out!" Jamila exclaimed. I was still getting used to her propensity for loud outbursts. "My husband's a lawyer too, and he's actively trying to grow his practice. I was supposed to pass the bar and be his partner in the firm, but..." She gestured towards the playground. "Someone has to raise these little people. Someday." She focused on a spot above my head for a few seconds. Then she looked at me, her eyes open wide. "We need to get our men together. Why don't you guys come for dinner tonight?" And I'm gonna wrap up there. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Sorry for the ones over there. And thank you so much for the group. And I hope that the gala was a great success. I really wanted to be there. And good luck with everything. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Carl. Okay, so we're gonna have 3 leaders and then a short intermission, and we'll have our second half. Just a reminder for those of you reading, please stick to your 5 minutes. I'll harass you if you don't. So come on up in poetry, Tracy Dimond.
How's everyone doing? I like that. That was really lovely, Carol. I need to know how their friendship continues. So thank you for having me at the Interloop. I came all the way down from Baltimore. Baltimore. Lukewarm, okay. And I just have 2 poems for you tonight from my new book, Emotion Industry. And this one's a sonnet. Love tan. I am romantic like the smell of clothes draped in crime drama. Don't pee in the water, pee in the woods. I have a crush on the world, but it is not treating me well. And if I am an object, I am an object of your nightmares. Construction trucks stop in front of me, then put up the lane closed sign. How easily can you crack my spine and find a way for our bones to touch? Every poem is a love poem in which we play a love game. I want to feel all the tiny steps of our tan destruction. Will you kiss each vertebrae? We are alone together. Let's just have a pillow fight party, hurt each other with feathers. I am going to climb my loft bed and kiss the spider webs. You can make sounds, that's okay. That's how we do it in Baltimore, so I know most of DC is good too. Alright, this is my last poem, and all you really need to know is it's really steeped in memory and anxiety for the future. Remember fire. When I was a kid, I thought all soup came from cans. Produce grew in stores, except for the carefully planted tomatoes in the backyard. Those stood until it was time for my brother and me to dig for grubs. To commit a capital offense in the home was to put away wet dishes. Dirt wasn't an issue. We always removed our shoes. One day I overheard, the bigger the diamond, the bigger the divorce. I'll never get married. Not when it's happier to trust that someone will come back. We have too much perspective to romanticize pain. I hang to memories so I feel this is true. Then I redefine excitement. For example, when my safety is commended, I say, I'm not paying for an abortion. Take on new rules, live on an edge, drink water over a computer on a moving bus, or leave a thank you card with your phone number in a public restroom. Tune the weather to traveler info, then ask how you can get further away. Lifestyle moves everyone to use credit cards. Buy things to fit into a system. This abstraction builds on abstraction. These wars look like movies, but we are not movie stars. Thinking takes so much time. If I have to confront the future, I think I figured out what to do while living in economic uncertainty. My 5-year plan is to not get hit by a car. My 20-year plan is to stay the same size so I don't need to buy new clothes when everything in my closet becomes vintage. I remember I'm more than a body when I'm on the internet. Text fills the situation. Well-chosen avatars create context. Do you confuse gender and performance? The correlation exists in hair and color. Today is fire. Sun in the eyes blocks out everything. I finally made my peace as far as me and me go. Thank you.
I forgot to mention, we are big fans of shameless self-promotion here. So Carol, some folks over here, as do a few other folks. Tracy, where can people get your book?
Right here.
Right here, from Tracy.
Should I put them over there? Or-
No, whatever you want.
I'll have them on.
Yeah. So folks, if you have anything you want to pop up here, please do. Next in picture is Sean Murphy. Okay. I didn't think I saw him in the house tonight. So, meeting the teacher, we're gonna move on. Poetry, Liza Achilles.
Hi everyone, I'm Liza Achilles. I'm the author of 2 Novembers, a memoir of love and sex in sonnets. It was published on July 1 by Beltway Editions. And the backstory of this book is that I fell in love with my physical therapist. True story. And I started writing him Shakespearean sonnets to, get my feelings out. And I wrote them in modern English, and I kept writing for an entire year as my love life changed. I ended up writing 155 sonnets. I'll read a few of them for you tonight. Many of them are humorous, so do listen for the jokes. Sonnet 3. What am I thinking? Iams, rhymes, a mess. My hope behind these sonnets I can see is futile. What, I'm aiming to impress a star of basketball with poetry? I neither know nor care who has the ball. Pentameter is not your thing. However, perhaps we're not so different after all. For as I sit here struggling to be clever, I work so hard as thumps and throbs my heart, and shooting hoops, a classy way to court. See, basketball played well, it is an art, and poetry of love, a ballsy sport. If leaping for some ball is what you do, well, I, dear jock, am chasing after two. Sonnet 49. This is for all the writers in the audience, like all of you. I wrote a book of fiction. It's quite novel. I'm a walking advertisement of my work. They say in Boston it's a novel. I'm too forever pitching you my love. Each day I email bigwigs in the city, attempting to entice someone to bite. I write you next a note that's sweet and witty. My phone, though, seldom dings, not day, not night. I'll try, therefore, a different dating tack. I'll talk to agents. Experts say one should be able to describe one's paperback while moving between building floors. If stood, we too, however, in an elevator, I'd clasp and kiss you. Speeches could come later. Okay, one more. This is Sonnet 87. Love, hear my cursed and miserable lament. My queries I've by nearly everyone been slighted or ignored, despite what I sent. This sonnet sequence, too much is undone. My day job, boring, pointless, and soul-sucking. My garden choked with weeds and vegetables. I've no arm strength to pick. You, I'm not fucking, right here and now. Life's not all smiles and lulls. My toenail polish smudged on some unknown home furnishing left where? A pinkish stain. My budget, smart and new, week one got blown. Wow, but what caused, you ask, this streak of bane? Rash gods, bad luck, rude saps, or is it, just PMS? Yep, winks the calendar. Thank you very much.
All right, friends, welcome back to the second half. We're gonna get started back up here. Sorry, I'm like already. Awesome. Well, kicking it off is gonna be Nick Gardner, and he is our October Authors Corner Spotlight. So give him a big warm round of applause. These are little postcards with information about Nick and his book, Delinquents and Other Escape Attempts. I was like, escape stories, no, attempts. And he's got those books for sale over here as well. Nick, we're excited to have you. Come on up.
Hey, I'm Nick. And it was great to hear Carol. I have heard her read once before, just recently. So it's awesome to read with you again, though, and I'm glad to hear more of your book too. Yeah, basically, yep. There you go. Oh, thank you. So yeah, I have a book out, Delinquents and Other Escape Attempts. The story I'm going to read is Psychodelicious. The book's for sale right there, and I'd love to talk to you about it. It also has a map inside it, so if you need another reason to buy it, this story's called Psychodelicious. By the time Alan fired up the grill at the Great Midwest Beer Fest, we were already food truck experts. Smash burger virtuosos, burrito hotshots, savants of kimchi slaw. When I glanced at the service window, the crooked queue of beer enthusiasts stretched beyond the kegerator tents, proving Psychodelicious street food's weird allure. Alan told me, who doesn't like beer and greasy grub? What could go wrong? A culmination of his batshit dreams and our grueling effort, of nights where Alan killed his beer and hit the hay, leaving me to soak and scrub the dishes alone. This was success, and we shared the pride between us. What could go wrong, I wondered, when Alan always won? A question that I, the loser, could not properly ponder. We traded food for sample pours from dad-bought beer, the festival's hosts. Their brews named things like Double Dry Hopped Terpene Dream. Live bands droned from the stage in the meadow, and heads swarmed with woozy vibes. I told the customers it was a 20-minute wait. 25, 30. Alan said, catch up. I mangled a name barely audible above the psych rock background din, and passed the paper tray to the appropriate hungry hands. My mouth was dry, so I tipped the last sip of beer foam and felt wings fumble around my mouth before the stinger pierced my tongue. I screamed and I lurched into Alan. His palm sizzled on the grill. We spun, tumbled, collided, the space too tight to dance out of one another's way. He said, what the fuck? I said, ooh. The swinging slapbox of Alan's hands, the dodge and mumble of my swelling face. The plan for the summer was to stuff myself in a space too hot, too cramped to think. A relief. My philosophy was that if I kept busy, I could clear my head, but my thoughts continued to reel. I'd been listless since April, before I defended my thesis and graduated with a master's and a mountain of debt. PhD rejections piled on, and my partner, Callie, signed up for a doctorate out west, said we should take time to ourselves. I was hesitant and lacked focus. I broke my lease and drove the 6 hours from DC to Ohio and took up residence with the wolf spiders in my parents' basement. Academia was a ladder, but what happens when you run out of rungs? The answer? I laid in bed for a week. No clear direction, no definite point. I put so much effort into drawing a line between my promising future and my more troublesome past. New number, no social media, a jumble of addresses without forwarded mail. I'd never considered my mom handing me the cordless, another relic. I didn't expect Alan's voice in the receiver, my best friend from a life forgotten. I answered with a frown. He said, welcome home, Billy boy, good timing. I had a dream. I sat up, riveted. I said, what? He said, listen, we gotta act fast, come by. Sure, I said, I had nothing better to do. We formulated the plan. 2 days later, he pulled out the hide-a-bed in his spare room and offered me a place to stay. Alan said he was better now, a changed man. A few drinks per day and a bit of pop. He looked clean, this fresh incarnation with his tight haircut and button-down, long sleeves that sheathed his stick and pokes. He'd lost 2 fingers since I last saw him. I noticed when he held up his envelope of food truck seed cash. He explained Outback Steakhouse meat slicer, grease-slicked floors, a wake-up call, but also a boost forward, a cash settlement. He shook the envelope, fingerless, in my face. I backed my car out of the drive and explained his success. As he explained his success, he said, I listened to this podcast, all about putting your plan out there, speak it, write it, the universe will respond. He said that the plan for the food truck came to him while he slept, the night before the meat slicer accident proved it a reality. Luck, fate, all you had to do was pay attention, keep your eyes peeled for a sign. Hokey, I said. I didn't want to be a dick, just reasonable. I rebutted that it wasn't that way for all of us. I said some people work hard all their lives and never get an answer. And that's it. Thank you.
People are taller than me. Next in fiction, Besu Tadesse.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry.
Good evening. This is an original, unpublished work. It's called A Breath in the Void. Hello? Is anyone there? No light in the void, no up or down, no floor or ceiling. The man was suspended in darkness, hyper-aware and afraid. His arms and legs were heavy like bags of wet sand in a storm, and his neck was stiff as a board. He shifted his eyes as much as his sockets would allow. In his limited field of vision, he spotted a dim light in the distance, a pinhole of brilliant freedom in a sea of dark despair. Suddenly, the man's head jolted forward until his chin thrusted into his chest. His head snapped back violently, shocking his neck around the spinal cord. A mechanical arm with long, slender metallic fingers was retreating to the darkness, holding a dark red plague mask with eye holes covered by clear plastic caps. He realized that the mask kept him from seeing the rest of his surroundings. Not that removing it helped much, but at least there was a bit more to see. The man's breathing labored, an invisible force slowly deflating his lungs. He tried to inhale more slowly with little improvement, and in that pain he regained feeling in his arms and legs again, his body quivering from excruciating tingles. He could at least position himself with that faint pinhole light as his morning star. Once the tingles crept from his fingers to his biceps, he tried to swing his arms in a freestyle swimming motion toward the light. Gaps in his nerves persisted around his shoulders, but he carried on. At the same time, a radiant warmth came across his back and feet. He slowly turned back to see its soothing glow, an aurora of colors swirling across the horizon, picturesque but terrifying, a beautiful vibrant swirl that accentuated the remaining emptiness. Turning and traveling across the sea of darkness, he came across a black mastiff standing at full attention with the pinhole light set far behind it. He hoped that the dog's leash was attached to a helpful stranger. The dog started walking towards him, then picking up speed, then rushing at full speed. The man froze at the sight of the dog's ruby eyes and sharp teeth, its snarls and heavy panting as it descended upon him. Within seconds, the dog leapt through the air. The man braced himself, but the mastiff was stopped mere inches from him by a chain around his collar, clanging violently as it struggled. The man thought he was safe for a brief moment, then the dog shot forward 6 more inches, nearly tearing into the man's face. He was pulled away at the last moment by a small child with stars for eyes and a shadowy outline against the warm, ever-increasing light behind them. The dog receded into the distance while the child held onto the man's wrist tightly, very tightly. The man stared back curiously, only realizing several seconds later that he was now standing upright, balancing on an invisible walkway. The man wanted to thank the child, but the child would not let go of its wrist. The child's starry eyes changed from yellow to white to blue, and the man's wrist seared until he could smell flesh burning. Each of his screams was swallowed by an ethereal force that shoved his protest back in his throat. With a final tug, the child let him go, leaving a dark and reddened ring. The child peered directly into the man's eyes until the intensity started burning his retinas. He turned to shut his eyes, but before long, the child was gone. He walked briskly toward the pinhole light. Behind him, distant rumbling, a horde of demons appearing on the horizon. In the middle of it, the child from before. Same outline, same starry blue eyes, holding the ruby-eyed mastiff on his leash. The demons had sharp edges in their silhouettes, blending with their grays and whites of teeth and claws. He turned to run toward the pinhole, pumping his arms faster and faster, but his legs changed from wet sand to jelly, and his lungs burned with each breath. He melted into space around him as the horde progressed, screaming and screeching and wailing with the dog and star-eyed child leading the charge. The man felt his resolve waning, drowning in his breathlessness, hoping for a quick and painless demise. But at that moment, he remembered the mask from earlier. The mask was the key. This was the dream, the ambling of his oxygen-deprived mind due to his obstructive sleep apnea, a weird logic-bending nightmare that could be fixed with the refilling of his lungs. He was not lost. He was in control. He was the master of this void. He lifted his body onto the walkway, closed one eye, reached his hand out toward the pinhole light, and pinched it. The pinhole was not a distant exit, but rather a small, chalky pill. He took the pill and placed it on his tongue, dissolving the horde just before he was engulfed. His breath came back to him, and the searing outer heat was replaced by a deep and healing inner warmth. All of his anxieties, his insecurities, his own personal horrors were released, left to be addressed in the real world where they belonged. And with that, his morning alarm rang, ending the cycle for another night. I have 2 books out. If you are interested in purchasing them, please go to your local bookstores in the area. For my short story collection, Broken Persons, you should be able to find it at Lost City Books, or if you're in Frederick, at Curious Iguana.
Thanks, Besu. Next in poetry, we have Cynthia Atkins. Javed Jahangir in fiction.
All right. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Can you hear me? All right. So this is kind of a story about stories. It's about, you're all writers, so I think you'll know where this is coming from. It's called Flood Damage. Even before the water came, he was having trouble with the book. His characters took lives of their own and then took their own lives. Suicide by drowning or self-immolation. They were creative that way. He was left again to stare at those blank pages. On the day of the flood, before his real-life troubles were fully upon him, he and his wife, Rosemary, had grinned secretly. It was the novelty of stepping into their favorite tales of floods and catastrophes and of pirate ships. At the time, they were amused by the cool water lapping at their ankles and the way the curtains pulled water up the walls. By midday, their rolled up pant legs and the rising dampness in the air made them breathe mist and chatter their teeth quite miserably. Buckets and mops in hand, they rushed about, picking electrical things off the floor like dead lobsters on Ogunquit Beach. Later, with the water swollen around their bed, flush against their wedding duvet, the romance of the matter had ended entirely. And the bed, only growing softer, yielded helplessly to the raid of the thick, darkening waters. As Rosemary had retreated to the bed, he heard her futile giggles fight against tears, all emotions overcome by the velvet hum of relentless water. It was Thursday, and he realized with a sudden and wrenching sadness that he was going to miss his meeting with the Haitian woman. He had rather looked forward to their meetings at the laundromat, particularly now that the ice had been broken between them. It was a laundromat used by people from the nearby development projects. They were generally wives of exiled ministers and businessmen, sycophants of deposed dictators, and scholars of homeopathy. There were housewives from Somalia, Cape Verde, and Bangladesh. In those laundry bags, mixed together like some unpronounceable recipe, one saw saris and jeans mingling surreptitiously with maybe a Tamil dance outfit. Amidst the spinning dryers and the industrial washers, a stillness pervaded, seemingly made for sneaky romances, or at least muffled conversations about visas or the TSA, matter about which everybody had stories now these days. A couple of weeks ago, they had sat on the bench outside and smoked cigarettes. It was one of those spring days that made some people friendly and others annoyed with unwarranted attention coming their way. But it turned out okay anyway. He had joked that her accent was so terrible that surely it was invented to make her seem more exotic than she really was. She was folding a pair of yoga pants in her fists at that time. She had already wrung the article of clothing until all moisture had been eviscerated, but her triceps continued to tighten all the same, until he felt something move in his gut, like somehow his entrails were connected to those yoga pants. Her voice lowered an octave, and a pentameter he was previously unaware of, curled around her words like a vine. She said, "I wonder if anything of what you know about me might be true." Then she smiled at him, making him feel more ridiculous than he already felt. Afterwards, he was mostly sure she had flirted with him in some strange way had gotten the better of his vanity. His presumptions, and his whole first world guilt situation. "I feel for your people's troubles," he had said. After all, they had been those troubles in Haiti after the earthquakes. "Do you now?" she had replied in a quiet, kind of way. It also made him feel like a petty liar. "I suppose we have to hear all about your feelings now, won't we?" she had said. But now he was ankle deep in water and in parity. Now he could tell her about his troubles, about him losing his home, perhaps. Maybe now he would seem less pitiable to her, or at least he would be as pitiable in the right sort of way. He went back to the flooded bedroom. Rosemary had long stopped hyperventilating. Fat streams were still sluicing past sideboards next to their bed. The water was dissolving his pasteboard book covers, separating from their hard boiled paper bodies. The books had grown fat with water, and his manuscript was drowned. The second and last time he saw her at the laundromat, he didn't tell the Haitian woman that he had started an eponymous novel using her name. It was his desire to confess to her that she had been the seed he had needed to help him find a place to re-enter that novel, the one stalled for months in the hoarse winds of creative flow. But he did not say any of that to her because he was not really a writer. In the novel, he would have made her not what she looked like on the street, carrying her huge laundry basket, but how she should have been, in comfortable espadrilles, with her hair tied high above her head. And in the fictitious novel, the protagonist would tell her how he had fallen in love with her and her strange cargo, but only so long as he could have had the right to name her.
Okay, next in nonfiction, Ashlee Green.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am working on a memoir in essays, and this that I'm reading tonight is part of the prologue. I was probably 5 or 6 years old when my mom stopped chaperoning me during bath time. It was then that I had the entire small pink bathroom, the bathtub, to myself. When I say pink, I mean the bathtub itself, plus the sink, plus the wall and the floor tile. The whole space gave off muted Pepto-Bismol vibes. Mamie Pink, people called it, for Mamie Eisenhower, who popularized the trend of pink bathrooms in the 50s. But it was the 90s then. The trend had come and gone, and in my family's case, had resisted renovation. When my mom bathed me, it was efficient. She'd run the bath water, test the temperature, scrub my skin with a washcloth. Too hard, I'd tell her when she reached the bottoms of my feet. Then I'd pull away. Sometimes there were bubbles. Sometimes I think there was a small portable radio inside the bathroom we used to listen to music. After each bath, my mom would tell me to rinse, instruct me to get out, then towel me off. The smell of Johnson's baby oil, my warm skin underneath soft pajamas. Sometimes we'd sit together, my mom and I. She'd hold me, her only child, in a towel on her lap. She'd rock me back and forth in a hug and sing to me, her voice reverberating off of the compact pink bathroom walls. Other times, my mom would dry me off, neatly comb my wet hair, dress me in PJs, then plop me on my parents' bed next to my dad. He'd point to poster-sized charts of the reptiles and amphibians of western Pennsylvania, teaching me their proper names. I learned how to distinguish a snapping turtle from an eastern spiny softshell, a rock bass from a bluegill, a black rat snake from an eastern garter. When I was alone in the bathtub, it felt like time expanded. Solo bath time was magnificent because it was one of the only places I could be completely alone, completely myself, without the input of one or both of my parents. I'd close the frosted shower doors and lie back in the tub until my ears were submerged, singing at the top of my lungs, making humming sounds and do-re-mis, my hair a floating mane that I'd comb through with my fingers to feel the way warm, soapy bath water made it turn to silk. The traces of sound around me, my parents talking in the next room, the faint clinking of dishes being washed in the kitchen sink downstairs, a dog barking in the distance, a car rolling by the alley behind our house, simply ceased. I'd challenge myself, plug my nose and close my eyes and see how long I could submerge my whole head underwater before I needed to come up for air. Sometimes I tried to keep my eyes open, the pink room around me turning to a blur of walls and ceiling. I have a vague memory of my mom knocking on the door. I must have been in there close to an hour at times, my fingertips and toes fully pruned, the bath water growing tepid, and saying in a reprimanding sort of way, "What are you doing in there?" That's when I knew I'd have to wrap things up and actually lather and clean myself instead of just playing around, luxuriating. What was I doing in there? Getting to know myself, I guess. My body and what it felt like to be alone with it, a taste of autonomy. What I'd call it now, my first somatic healing experience, the water serving as my venue for freedom and exploration. I love bathing now as I loved it as a child. I keep my cupboard stocked with essential oils, Epsom salts, incense, bath bombs, tea lights, fragrant lotions, scrubs, soaps, and body oils, bath brushes, and pumice stones. Most nights I soak for upwards of an hour, listening to audiobooks, music, podcasts, or nothing at all. I have been known during full moons to prepare bath soak recipes with rose petals and gemstones, to write elaborate spells about acceptance and abundance, self-love, and the outlines of an imagined future, then read them aloud as I enter the tub's threshold. Water, metaphysically speaking, is an introspective element after all. It's receptive, emotional, and feminine. I'm on the hunt for the perfect bath tray, which will have inserts for a wine glass or tea mug, a stand for a book. When I'm apartment hunting, which is often, I'm a chariot at heart, a bathtub is an absolute must. A favorite photo of me from my childhood bath times. I'm soaking in the buff, in the pink bathtub, bubbles everywhere, with a mohawk of foam atop my head, smiling like a dreamer, smiling like I'm in another world, right at home.
All right, and bringing us home in fiction is Philip Reari.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Interloop, for having this event and all you do for the DC writing community, and to all the other readers who are all very good. I'll be reading an excerpt from my recently published novel. It takes place partially in Santa Barbara in 1969 after this massive oil spill there that kind of changed the course of the environmental movement at that time. It's for sale over there. There's a special promotion. If you come and ask, I'll let you know what that is. And I'm introducing a new character here. Devereaux Sharp rises before dawn each day. He has a long list to get through to open the faculty club on time, and he doesn't like to rush. In those calm, quiet minutes when only the birds are stirring, he often thinks of his son, 3 daughters, and 6 grandchildren. He likes to imagine them waking up, likes to imagine them living even better lives than he has, one day at a time. He used to think of himself as the maintenance man, but most people refer to him as the caretaker, and he likes the implication of that he takes care of things that people care about. Although they might not always show it, most of the faculty members treat him respectfully. Some hardly notice him, and some, it must be said, are rude. He doesn't mind. He's been around long enough, 55 years, to know that it doesn't pay to take things personally. Most people don't mean any harm by the things they do, although some of what he perceives in students these days, what he reads about students at other universities like Berkeley, worries him. Increased agitation combined with a rebellious attitude towards power. Not that they aren't justified in demanding change and wanting to improve things. That's what he wants after all, mostly for his kids and grandkids. He fears the situation could spiral out of control though, leading to more strife, less progress. He wonders if anyone is really in control. Whenever he worries like this, he thinks of his own children and rests assured that their fine attributes, respectfulness, loving natures, good work ethics can be extrapolated to the generation as a whole. He pauses for a whiff of the morning mist over the lagoon as he gathers the mail at the club's rear entrance, adjacent to the pool and the patio. It's hard for him to imagine a more beautiful scene, at least it used to be before he started reading that new book he found. A grassy hill leading down to the lagoon, and beyond that the ocean. Mighty eucalyptus trees lining the path up to the university center in the near distance. That's another reason he likes to wake up early. It allows him to appreciate what he has. And gratitude, that's another fine attribute. The thought reminds him of something he overheard one of the most amiable professors, Bill Allen, say the other day as he read by the pool. Talking to another young professor, Allen said, "When students at a university as idyllic a setting as this, with every distraction in the world, start getting pissed off about the state of things, then you know it's real. We're not Berkeley down here. This is a surfing haven, a party school even. But I sense an awareness growing, really coming on. And if I contribute to that, man, then so be it. I don't want to be like some alien life form to these kids." Dover wanted to continue listening to Bill. The professor and Sissy call him that. He had to run inside to help one of the housekeepers prepare for a distinguished guest. Still, those few sentences lodged in his mind. He never went to college and doesn't feel he can relate to what the students are going through. He can't quite comprehend what it's like to possess the wide open futures they have and the opportunity to focus almost exclusively on learning, although he knows the students at UCSB aren't always so focused. But they do try, lugging around backpacks full of books and staying up all night to write papers. He can see it in their eyes in the mornings when they pass by the club. There's a certain dry redness that indicates an all-nighter of the studious sort. He can't help but grin when he sees that. Then there's the wet redness, usually from a hangover. Sometimes he smiles at that too, but often he shakes his head in disappointment. He likes to imagine that his grandchildren one day, making that walk from Isla Vista to campus after a long night, term paper in hand, they'd feel both exhausted and exhilarated, a perfectly fine combination of emotions for a young person to possess. The sun is rapidly burning away the fog now, ushering in clear views of the pale blue sky and deep blue sea. Dover loves the damp coolness of the fog and the way it shrouds the landscape in mystery, and when it rises, he's never disappointed with what it reveals. But this morning, his nose is twitching. There's an unfamiliar harshness to the air. He worries it will disturb some of the guests and that they might think it's emanating from the club. He'll have to double check that it's not. He walks to the edge of the property and sniffs again, assuring himself that the prickly stench is coming from afar and not within, an assurance that isn't very reassuring. Back inside, shielded from the ominous odor, Dover eats his simple continental breakfast and continues reading Desert Solitaire, an odd little book left behind by a philosophy graduate student the other week. Dover loves to read whatever visitors to the faculty club neglect to take with them. While some of it is far too technical or dense for him to understand, he always gets something out of it. In a way, he considers this his undertaking an informal education. He lives on a state university campus, after all, one of the top ones in the country. It makes him feel more a part of the ecosystem. Reading Edward Abbey's book, and this Abbey is quite a character, Dover can almost feel the heat of the Utah desert scalding his shoulders. The scorching sun in this Arches National Park sounds like nothing Dover's ever experienced, or even really considered, and the idea of it, the power it has over your body, and the way it can dictate your actions, is something he's surprisingly drawn to. The weather in Santa Barbara is so accommodating. He wants to feel this overpowering heat, to succumb to it, and has decided that when he retires, if not before, he will make the trip to Arches. He'll become one of the growing number of tourists of the remote area of the country that Abbey so ruthlessly laments. While he strongly relates to the tourists that Abbey pillories, just hoping to get a few days off and see something new, something spectacular even, he sympathizes with Abbey's critique of industrial tourism and the relentless growth. He gets the way he so despises all the big cars and wide roads made to accommodate them. He's witnessed many of these roads and the cars they transport like ants on the march take over the landscape during his lifetime, and it hasn't been pretty. And he has an almost innate understanding of Abbey's desire to live simply and naturally. Some days, when Dover's out of sync with the campus vibe, he feels alienated from his surroundings, as if he might be rejected as an outsider. On days when he's beat down like this, he strolls over to the lagoon and hikes along the narrow bluff trails which offer both isolation and expansive views. At these moments, he feels in touch with something much more ancient and formidable than the university and its inhabitants, older even than the mission downtown. And as you age, it's nice, necessary even, to connect with the things much older and more enduring than yourself. Dover takes one last sip of his coffee before closing the book and slowly rising from his seat. He can see Stork Tower now that the morning mist is cleared. He's still adjusting to the intrusion of the square column, but he knows he'll get used to it. Soon enough, it'll seem like a natural part of the landscape, for better or worse. He wonders when they'll start using the bells, when the tower will commence keeping time. That will lend it an air of authority, the gravitas to watch over everything, to assume a stoic figure as the surrounding world passes from one moment to the next. He looks at the clock on the wall. It's just about time to unlock the front door.
All right, can we have one more round of applause for all our readers and Carol? Thank you guys so much for being here. Awesome crowd tonight. Abs? No, I'm not gonna do these honors. This is not me. Carol, our little raffle situation. Yes.
For all who donated, we're gonna read a little ticket and you get this cute little tote bag. Okay, number 0589.
589 in the house? No? No? Also, this is Abby, everyone. I probably communicated with her at some point.
Programs coordinator. Okay, 0596.
You have a tote. Get out of here. 0589? Yeah, was it you?
I can't remember, 98 or 89. Yeah, it was 89. Yeah. You got it?
Amazing.
Did you already do a
We
round?
did another
Okay.
round.
I'm asleep. I'm sorry.
We're still recovering. We're still recovering.
All right, so our next reading event is November 19th at Sunny's Pizza. Also at Sunny's Pizza is our happy hour event on Thursday at the bar inside where we'll just hang out and talk.
November's event will be the last reading event for the year, and then we'll see you in February. We'll get started up with another season. But yeah.
Catch you on the flip side.
Thanks for being here.
Good night.
Thanks for being awesome.